Hello, welcome to Final Whistle Weekly. It's Neil and I here to, well, deal with the aftermath. I suppose we'll talk later about the women's massive game coming up on Sunday against Swansea. And also we can have another look now that the FAW has given us a bit more detail on the Project Cymru, the idea of us going into the Nathaniel MG League Cup. And we might have to mention, I think the men played a league game this week. I'm scared to ask, Neil, as you are, our secret agent over the border in Shropshire. But
Yeah,
how are you doing?
yeah, definitely secret agent over the border in Shropshire. There's many of us at the moment, and I think we're all feeling the same way. Had the local slot fans on my messaging me this morning saying, "What did you think of that?" And I said, "Just what can you say?
Mm,
They took their chances. There was a definite penalty,
yeah,
and we just didn't play well as a team.
yeah.
I don't know why we went for hoofball and went to revert to one up front and then Lee playing off him because we've talked about that quite a lot, haven't we, Mark? Where there's nobody to play off Fletcher or any tall centre forward when they're up there on their own.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I'm going to give us a slight alternative view of the game, but I need first to give the context of we did not play well and Shrewsbury wholly deserved to win. Um, at half time, I'm not saying I was thrilled, but I felt comfortable. If I'm totally honest, I thought, okay, they've come at us, they've given us problems, but we had an awful lot of the ball in their half. I thought it was working a little bit, having Lee dropping off and other players when they were running into the space. We were finding gaps in the middle of their defence, and I thought, okay, that didn't go according to plan completely, but I feel second half we'll be able to build on that. But that penalty just seemed to take the stuffing out of us, and well, frankly, I don't think that we really got going in the second half properly, did we? In all honesty.
No, I think if Rathbone maybe scored that header just before half time, it might have been a totally different game in the second half. Um, yeah, we didn't get going at all in the second half. Mark again, they closed us down very quickly. There was for me, the Wrexham team went up for the fight as a local derby should be. There wasn't that urgency there, and then we got to desperation, putting four strikers on the pitch in one go at the end to try and get an equaliser. Which again, we could have scored. There were two or three players there. The keeper made a great save
Yeah.
from I think it was Fletcher, was it again, and Mullin who just ran behind him the ball, and yeah, it just wasn't our night.
I mean, to be fair to
One of
Mullin,
those games you've got to hit on the take it on the chin
yeah,
and move on to the
yeah,
next game and hope we play far better
and
next
fair
Thursday
play.
against Birmingham at home.
Well, yes, exactly. Good chance to bounce back, isn't it? I mean, to be fair to Shrewsbury as well, they're not going well, but they really did show terrific spirit for the fight. I thought their two strikers really worked our centre backs well, and
Yeah,
I mean Ainsworth on the side of the pitch was quite a sight to see. He was going crazy, jumping whenever there was a header and everything, and I'm sure he was playing to the gallery, but. Yeah, if it's going to help get the crowd behind the team, then smart move by him. But I thought Shrewsbury, I know it's not comfortable for you to admit it, but in your circumstances, did do well, didn't they?
they did. For me, I mean, there were two very poor teams on the pitch last night. The football was diabolical. There were so many misplaced passes, the hoofball over the top. But as you say, their two strikers gave our defence lots of problems. They had a lot of pace. And again, unfortunately, McConnell slipped over twice again last night, which he's done in a previous game as well. And I think somebody should have said, well, can we not buy him a new pair of boots? Because I think that's what's that, 3 goals now he's opposition has scored from him slipping over, unfortunately. I
Yeah,
mean,
Barnsley game was the
he's been a rock in the centre of defence there for game after game. But yeah, I don't know what's happened, Mark. I don't. What are your thoughts on it?
I think O'Connell's a great player for us, but unfortunately, yeah, he's had two unhappy games out of three there, hasn't he, really? I'm not so convinced it's slipping as much as there's some sort of balance thing going on, because that penalty shout that they had when it was 2-1, which wasn't a penalty,
No.
seemed to be a similar thing where he seemed off balance because Lloyd had given him a problem and backed into him a bit. So it's a shame that because we all know O'Connell is a really good centre back, and his ability to use the ball coming out from the back is valuable for us. I mean, it nearly worked when it was 1-1 when Fletcher found the space that Lee had created by dropping off, and O'Connell nearly put a through ball into him by stepping up into the Shrewsbury half, and luckily it was a really good interception that stopped Fletcher being 1-on-1. But we know O'Connell brings a lot of good qualities to the team, but we've got this terrific strength and depth. We've got Scar who can play that position. We've got Brunt, who I believe wasn't available for the Shrewsbury game, but with players of that quality in backup, yeah, it's not a squad you want to be making mistakes in because Phil Parkinson has alternatives, doesn't he?
Yeah, but do you think Phil Parkinson maybe made the wrong choices last night in the game in the lineup and the setup that we went for against the Shrewsbury team who'd been leaking goals left, right, and centre?
Not necessarily. I mean, I think it'd be easy for me with hindsight to say that, but I wasn't surprised that Fletcher got the start. I think that if he's got 90 minutes in him, and that's the first time he's played 90 minutes, by the way, for
Yeah.
Wrexham, um,
Mm-hmm.
then yeah, go for him. Personally, I expected Mullen to be alongside him. But
Yeah.
having said that, I think, look, playing Lee like that has worked quite well in recent games as well. So I don't, I don't think that. I think that ironically at the end when we, like you said, had the four strikers up front, I think that, I mean, he had to take a gamble. That is a big gamble when you do that, though, because the problem with that many attacking players on the pitch is how do you get the ball to them? And we failed to do that. I thought when we went to the four at the back and had Mullin playing off two up front, Fletcher and Marriott, I thought we at that point we looked like we had a goal in us. And then when we really went for broke, which I understand, I think we stopped actually troubling Shrewsbury then. A little bit of me thought maybe bring James off at that point, late point, rather than Rathbone, because Rathbone maybe is suited to those sort of getting up there and getting loose balls if we've gone long, rather than James who'll look to pass the ball about because he won't have any players around him to pass the ball to. So I think yeah, it all petered out, but I think to be fair to Parkinson, he's got it right so many times. He's earned the right to not be
Oh,
second guessed.
definitely so. I think we had a really good shout for a penalty when Mullen was hauled down in the area with the player wrapping his arms around him, but the
Yeah.
referee wasn't convinced. But whether there's too much simulation there by Mullen, but he was definitely had his arms wrapped around him and couldn't escape from him. So,
The
but yeah,
referee,
man.
like you say, he
Go on,
wasn't
Mark. Sorry.
convinced, and he wasn't convincing either, was he? The referee, I thought, was poor, and I don't mean just from a selfish Wrexham point of view. I thought there were some clear fouls on Shrewsbury, especially in the first half, that he didn't give, and I think maybe a yellow or two perhaps we could have had that he didn't give. I thought the referee was very up and down. Um,
Yeah, I thought he was very slow bringing out these yellow cards. Because I thought one of their players was took the heels off one of our. I can't remember who it was because I went out of the room. But
to scream in the garden.
pardon?
He went out the room to scream
Yeah,
in
I
the
think you can walk away from the television when they're not playing well, can't you? Where
garden.
you can't walk away from the commentary.
Oh, but
No,
how I've tried.
was it Pierre or something like that? When they had a player there called Pierre.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I thought he was very lucky not to get a yellow card in the first 10 minutes or so.
yeah, yeah. The referee I thought was really erratic, and I thought at the start he went in with the mentality of I'm going to let the game flow, but what he actually did was ignore fouls, which is
Yeah,
nonsense. It's like, oh, I've got a high bar. I'm going to allow physical contact. Well, I don't have a problem with that, and I accept it in a derby. You might feel you need to do that, but not. Oh yeah, well that's a foul, but I won't give those sorts of fouls. I'll just give the really obvious ones because he has to go back eventually to refereeing it properly. Now, I thought the ref was poor personally. I think the penalty shout was legitimate. It is, I try to see things like that from a ref's point of view or from a professional's point of view, when there is shirt tugging that happens and it is, the players don't complain about it. And I think you've got to think, okay, so it's only when it gets to a certain point that it's a foul, but where is that point? I mean, in that one, I do accept that Mullin had his arm around the Ojo's arm as well, but he only had his arm around him because Ojo had his arm around Mullin's throat, and you can't loop your arm around a guy's arm unless it is round your throat like that. So, um, and the way he yanked him back at the end, at the time I thought,
Mm.
oh, I guess it's Mullin again, is it? He's trying to play for this, and I wasn't too scandalized to be honest at the time, but looking back at it looks like a penalty to me, actually, because Mullins within playing distance of the ball, and then he isn't. And there's a clear movement by the defender that coincides with that. So I think we had a
Yeah,
case, but it doesn't excuse. We didn't lose because that wasn't given. We lost because we
no, not
play
at all.
well.
We lost because the problem we're having at the moment is scoring numerous goals. When what's more concerning is not creating the chances like we were earlier on in the season, where the football was far far brisker, the passing was slick. We'd be up defending our own goal, and the next minute we were up the other end of the pitch putting the ball in the back of the net, which we seem to have lost that. I can't put my finger on it why, but what is concerning for me is our away form. Our home form. We're top of the table for our home form in the points we've secured, but away form we're something like 15th in the table. We're securing only 13 points on away games, and why is that the case? Mark, is what I rack my brains about. Why are we so different away from home than playing at the racecourse?
Well, I mean, I'm thinking in terms of you say about taking chances. It was good that Marius came back. I thought he looked quite sharp as well. Made a couple of good near post runs that he didn't quite get to, but they were the sort of runs I want to see a striker making. As for the discrepancy between home and away form, here's a weird theory I was starting to develop yesterday. Is the fact that we are so good at home and we feel so, excuse the pun, at home there, is that
Mm-hmm.
making us feel a bit more like, oh, we no longer got our home comforts when we go away? Do you know what I mean? Am I being a bit naive? You've got such self-belief and confidence at the racecourse that when you go away from it, it's like, oh, we're not in Kansas anymore. This is scary. I know I'm exaggerating, but there's something strange going on
Maybe
there, isn't
so.
it? Yeah.
Yeah, maybe so. I mean, we can't say we haven't got the support at the away games because
Yeah.
nearly every away game we go to,
Mm.
they have a sell out away following. So, the fans have been fantastic.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's very difficult. We have put in a couple of good away performances. Peterborough away this season was
Yeah.
superb. Charlton away we were very
Yeah.
very good.
Yeah.
Um,
Second
so it's
half
not
went
as if
wise.
we're poor all the time.
Yeah. I don't know. We've got to remember we're still third. That's the most important
Oh,
thing. I
very
mean,
true, very true.
but
We've missed a good. We could have
yeah,
gone top last night.
yeah,
We're
yeah.
now 3 games in front of Birmingham,
Mm,
and also a game now ahead of Wickham again, with
yeah.
and equal on points with Wickham. Um, so yeah, I mean, which makes next Thursday's game a massive, massive game.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You're not wrong there. Absolutely. They one other thing I was just thinking about the game as well. I thought Barnett put some good stuff into the box, but too much didn't come down the right. We weren't able to get him, I thought, into the positions that we wanted him in regularly enough. A lot more came down the left where we weren't really getting anything into the box. And I thought that was a bit of a shame because when Barnett got the ball, he was beating the the left back and getting balls in. And I was sort of encouraged by that he might be able to continue. The fact that Benning got taken off near the end when they were really trying to cover up suggests that Ainsworth thought Barnett was finding crosses into the box too easily, but we didn't really get him into those positions often enough, which was a pity from my perspective.
No, very true. In the first half, I thought we did. We used him very well, and he was very confident. We scored yet again from one of his crosses for Fletcher to equalise. But second half, I think Shrewsbury then virtually double marked him and cut him out of the game, which and you actually saw him playing a lot deeper up the field and not making those runs up the wing. But yeah, no, Shrewsbury were very good. They cut everything out. I mean, they weren't good as a team. It was just like we weren't very good at the team, but they knew what they were doing.
Yeah.
You know, they cut everything out, stopped us moving up the pitch as a team.
Yeah, their work rate was excellent. Like I said, the strikers worked over our centre backs a bit, and their defence defended the edge of the box well. Um, and yeah, ultimately they got it right and they took their chances, and fair play to them for that. Um, I feel like a
Yeah,
lot
well, I mean, well,
on.
remember that a few weeks ago they beat Birmingham, in the same fashion.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah, but they're still, third bottom in the league, 5 points adrift from safety at the moment. So,
yeah, yeah.
I said to the local Shrewsbury fans after the Birmingham game, perhaps that's the lift you needed, to get yourself onto a run.
Mm.
But then they go and lose a cup 2 or 3
Yeah,
on the trot again. So
yeah. Well,
they raised the game for a local derby. Unfortunately, we didn't. That's what
yeah,
my feelings.
exactly. Yeah, yeah. Well, it's behind us now. That's life. Um, and I think we need to move on and have a bit of a palate cleanser, shall we? Because I've managed, and I'm really pleased about this, I've managed to retrieve the audio from an interview I did over a year ago. Um, the person I interviewed, circumstances have changed a bit, but it's a good interview, so I'm delighted to be able to bring this. And ironically, a guy who played for Wrexham and Shrewsbury, Mark Cartwright, who was goalkeeper, of course, played for us, then moved on, played for Shrewsbury. At the time that I was interviewing him, really interestingly, he was the CEO of US Soccer, which is right. It's not the second division in the States because there is no promotion and relegation, but it is seen as the second level in status league underneath the MLS. So it's a major league. And in fact, the conversation that we had, it was wonderful organizing it with him because basically he says, we'll do it because he had to drive from the league's offices in New York all the way down to Miami. So he was going to have a very long car journey ahead of him, and he was happy to just chat during that journey. The problem, of course, was that the sound quality wasn't brilliant, but because he was in his car. But I've managed to oh man, I worked so hard to tidy it up and failed. But this week I sprinkled a little bit of AI onto it, and it's come up trumps, I'm delighted to say. It probably means that the Chinese government have got all my personal details, but never mind. They so he's now, of course, CEO of Huddersfield Town, funnily enough, the team that's challenging us for promotion. But like I said, I interviewed him before then. So yeah, but let's have a break from talking about Wrexham losing at Shrewsbury and have a listen to Mark Cartwright. Well, Mark, firstly, thank you so much for joining us because it's brilliant to speak to you, and you are fascinating. There are so many different strands we could chat about. I mean, before you even came to Wrexham, you had you were at York City. You were terribly unlucky, and then you went to Florida Tech, and in some ways that seemed to kickstart things for you.
No, it's absolutely right, Mark. So firstly, thank you ever so much for inviting me on and having me on. And in response to that, yeah, no, it's absolutely right. I did what was then a YTS. I was out for, I think, 3 months with an illness, and then literally had to come straight back in, play, did my cruciate ligament, was out for the rest of that year. Long story, never obviously did enough in those 2 years to warrant a professional deal. And if I'm honest, I wasn't ready for one either. Because, at 18 I wasn't mature enough, and then the opportunity to come to America and do a degree and play at the same time, in a completely different country I think that was the part that made me grow up. And it made me develop, not just as a player, but also as a human. So I think you're absolutely right, that was the catalyst for me being able to come back and make it as a professional.
I mean, it must be said that you're being modest there. I mean, you were inducted in the Florida Tech Hall of Fame, and that team was phenomenally successful. And of course, our American listeners know college sport is just massive in the States in a way it totally isn't over here. I played for University of Liverpool football team. 6 people watched on a good day, but I've been to a few Wrexham games like that, to be fair, but you know, that really is it's a proper grounding for a young sportsman, isn't it?
No, listen, it was phenomenal. I mean, there was no expense spared, but the medical room at the university. Sorry, the medical room. The sat nav was talking to me then. Sorry, Mark.
That's good.
The medical room at the university was absolutely phenomenal. You know, it had the state-of-the-art equipment, ice baths before, you know, England even knew what ice baths were and things like that. So it was phenomenal. Like you say, I mean, we won the national championship. You know, I think my record there was second to none, which is obviously why, as you nicely mentioned, I was inducted into the Hall of Fame, which was a great honour. You know, it was a great honour, and it's very much run like a professional sport, the university sport. Whether that's the American football, the English football, you know, however you do. We used to fly to games.
Yeah.
You know, be put up in a hotel, everything else. I mean, it was actually when I came back and when I came to Wrexham. You know, when I walked into the physio department at that point, I think it was 2 massage beds and 1 machine that nobody actually knew what it did. It was called the biscuit barrel because it looked like a biscuit barrel and it just used to be put over whichever part of your body wasn't working properly, and supposedly it would fix you.
Wow, they should bring that back. That sounds fantastic. And if biscuits are involved, I'm definitely going to be in there.
We had a biscuit barrel and the magic sponge.
Yeah.
It all worked.
It's like carrot and stick, isn't it? So, and then, so how did you find your way to Wrexham then from Florida?
So my dad, I had family in the area. So my dad was from Betsy College, and then we still had family that lived in Wrexham. And I'd said to my dad, you know, look, I'm coming home for Christmas. Is there any chance you can just get me training with somebody so I can stay fit for when I go back to university the following, you know, in the January. So his first port of call was Wrexham and Brian Flynn. And Brian said, yeah, you know, get him in. Happy for him to come and train with us. So I did that for probably 3 or 4 weeks. I then flew back to America and had a really enjoyable 3 or 4 weeks. And then my dad, unbeknown to me, my dad had gone back in, or had rung Brian and sort of said, look, really appreciate you having Mark in, you know, it's great. And at which point Brian had said, well, look, if he's willing to come back in whenever it was, you know, he can come till the end of the season and then we'll see how he does. So it was one of those where I had a decision to make. Did I stay in America, or did I, you know, sort of chase the dream a little bit? So at that point, you know, you're full of confidence. You're a young lad. You believe in your abilities. You're untouchable. So I took the opportunity. Came in, you know, spent March, April, and you know, a bit of May training every day and on trial, and then you know, I was lucky enough to get offered a contract at the end of it. And
I mean, it's great for you to get then established, but the problem is, of course, that Wrexham have a goalkeeper who was was actually on one of the longest runs of consecutive games ever for the club in Andy Marriott. And as we all know, goalkeepers have to wait their turn. And then he gets his jaw broken in a match against Bury, and suddenly, you know, you're going to get an opportunity.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I went in there knowing exactly what, you know, I was going in for. Andy had got a hell of a lot of more experience than I had, and at the time, mate, you know, let's be honest, he was a hell of a much better goalkeeper than I was, and that's why he got his, you know, his move to the top flight. But he was a great person to train with and learn from. You know, he was also, if he was fit, he was playing, so you knew your place. But when the opportunity came, it was, yeah, you try and take it. You try and take it as best you can. And I think, you know, whilst I had that opportunity, I think, you know, the debut was against Chesterfield. You know, we won 3-2, and, you know, there was some, I think, you know, think I did well,
Yeah.
you know, in that first block when Andy was out. I think he was out for about 6 weeks. And then obviously when he came back, you know, he was straight back in, which I understood. But it had given me a taste then for that first team football, and I felt, you know what, I've got to try and do this. And fair play, you know, speaking with Brian at the time, you know, trying to get out on loan and get some games, you know, he helped me with that front. So, and then it was just a case of waiting until Andy got his move.
I don't know if you remember, but after he broke his jaw, there was a story in the Evening Leader a couple of days later where he'd said he'd been investigating inflatable ice hockey masks and wanted to get permission to play, you know, not miss a game and play with a broken jaw within, which I've got to be honest, I found far-fetched and it never happened. But I mean, that must have been very frustrating. You wait for your chance and then, hang on, well, they could do something like this. I hope he didn't see that.
No. I mean, listen, Andy was desperate to carry on playing and keep playing and play every game, you know, and that's what you want. You know, you want your players to be absolutely desperate to play every match. So, you know, he was going to be doing everything he could to try and play, which is a bit awkward because you don't know, are you preparing for a game, aren't you preparing for a game?
Yeah.
You know, you're trying to find that out, and wasn't really until the last sort of minutes where you're about to start the game. So, but you're trying to prepare as best.
Well, you certainly did do well in that block of games. You got the man of the match in the Chesterfield debut, which you modestly didn't mention. But there's one other massive game in that block as well, which I think people forget about, because that's the season that Wrexham got to the last 8 of the FA Cup against Chesterfield. We beat Chesterfield when you were playing against them, just thought. But the first round we drew Colwyn Bay.
Was it Colwyn Bay?
Yeah. It's supposed to be at Colwyn Bay. They switched it to the racecourse, and they absolutely played us off the pitch. But you had an absolute blinder. It was 0-0. By the time of the replay, Andy was fit again, and well, we would have been out in the first round if we hadn't had such a wonderful game. So you were the architect of that cup run.
I'll take that. No, I remember that game actually because there were a couple of saves that I remember quite well when it was. I think their striker was 3 1-on-1. I think I was playing in front of the cup at that point as well. But it was. I mean, it was an interesting one, that one, because you're quite right. We could have easily been beaten that round. And it was one of those games that I thoroughly enjoyed playing in. Not obviously because you played well, but also because it was my first real adventure as a player playing in the FA Cup. So it was very enjoyable. Let's put it that way.
You're being modest again, so I'll say it straight that the last night we were playing Notts County, and we encourage interaction with the listeners, and one Wrexham fan came up with a brilliant question saying, what's my favourite Robin Hood moment for Wrexham where we absolutely robbed the other side blind when they dominated us? And the first two that came to mind were games where you defied the other side. That one, and another one that I reckon we might get to in a moment. But then once Andy's back, of course, it was harder for you to actually get a game, wasn't it? But luckily, the Welsh Premier Cup came along and it gave you the chance to keep being involved.
Yeah, I mean, we did that, didn't we? When we got through to the finals, I think. Was that the year we beat Cardiff?
Yes.
At the racecourse.
Yeah.
No, it was. And that's what you want. Like I said, I'd had that taste of first team football, and because you have to remember, there was nobody really advising players back then. You know, nobody was helping players, or so you could. You know, I think there was a point where I got frustrated and just wanted to go out on loan because I wanted to play games. Whereas if I'd have probably had somebody advising me, and you know, as we go into my later career, you know, this is something that I used. You know, I probably wouldn't have been as aggressive in wanting to go and get games. I'd have probably tried to be a little bit more patient and understand it all a little bit more. But no, it was great, and winning that that cup was brilliant, and it got us into Europe. Of course, even though you played in the final and got us into Europe, Andy played the European games, but it was good to be involved.
Yeah. And then your chance comes 1998 in the summer when Brian Flynn makes you first choice over Andy, and what was that like for you? Like I said, I know professional players accept that someone will be chosen, but you had a good relationship with Andy. Did you see it coming? How did that all go on for you?
Andy, after Wally, Neil Wainwright had been sold to Sunderland, it was very apparent, and they also had an interest in Andy. So I think the reason I got, in all honesty, the reason I was made number one that summer ahead of Andy is because we all knew Andy was going, and it was just a matter of him waiting for an acceptable offer, for the terms and conditions to be agreed. So he knew he was going, and he was very honest with me about that, which, again, I can only appreciate from him because it helped me sort of mentally prepare for starting the season, and not worrying about, well, am I going to play 2 games and then he's back in, so we knew it was happening. It was just a matter of when was it going to happen.
And the two big new first teamers, of course, were you and Ian Rush that summer. That must have been quite crazy to be in the middle of, wasn't it?
It was mental playing with such a person that's had that career, and he's come to Wrexham, and and he was a nice bloke as well, It was just, I think he was probably, in his head, he was probably a lot sharper than we were, which is probably why he only ever managed to score 1 goal for us.
We started off sort of erratically, if you will. You kept quite a few clean sheets early on, but there were some quite frustrating games as well. But the standout one, my second Robin Hood match, was, well, you know what I'm going to say here, Man City away. I mean, goodness me. Oh, that must have been a hell of an experience for you.
It was absolutely phenomenal. And I think I'm probably one of those that can rise to a bigger occasion, but that then gets bogged down in the sort of week to week, which I think was proven later on in the season. But no, it was absolutely phenomenal. Again, playing against players that played in the Premier League about 2 seasons previously. And, they were the biggest team in the league, and to play at Main Road in front of that amount of fans was just, and it was such a lovely day as well. The sun was shining, it was nice weather, and it was. I mean, that's probably the best game I've ever had in my entire life. I made a lot of saves that you would go for. That was different class, but that game, it was literally, bang, bang, bang. There must have been 10 shots on top. 10 real good saves. So it was like, it was just surreal. At the end of the game, it was, Christ, that really happened. Wow, that was amazing. And that should have been my standard. If you can do it once, you should be able to do it again. But I was probably, I tell this story when I became an agent later. I always used to say to people, I worked incredibly hard to get into the first team, and then when I did get into the first team, I think I relaxed too much, thinking, great, I finally made it. Yeah. Whereas in reality, that was the point when I should have started working even harder to stay in the first team, and then sort of reality of the game sets in 7 months later.
Well, I mean, you mentioned that. I mean, the fans, whether it was partly an attachment to Marriott, did seem a little edgy as the season wore on. I mean,
polite way of putting it.
Yeah, okay. Well, I've got to be honest. Part of the reason I'm diplomatic is because I don't agree with them. I was a goalkeeper. Admittedly, I was a failed goalkeeper, unlike yourself. But I used to watch you and think you're aggressive in your decision making. You want to take responsibility for balls coming in the box, and I think people maybe didn't appreciate that. I felt people were sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say that's probably because I was a bit more Bruce Garoppolo than I was. Anything else. No, I think. Listen, I mean, there was probably a point in that season where I think if the management would have put an arm around me and said, "Look, Mark, we need to just take you out of the team. You need a break from it," and spoken and done that, I think that would have pushed me forward more. But again, like I say, times were different then. There was none of that. You were in sink or swim, and I think as the season wore, don't get me wrong, there were a couple of games like Luton away where I think, in fact, I think that was the last game I really played. I had a good game, and then of course we bring in Tommy, but I think there was an element of man management could have been better. And then and then also from a personal point of view, I should have been working harder. But listen, it was one of those after 7 years. After 7 years, I ended up leaving and went and got promoted with Brighton. So it was. Yeah. There was a silver lining to it in the end.
Well, I've got to say though, I mean, to be fair to you, that was Grobbelaar won a hell of a lot of trophies, and. I mean, people doubted him at first, but who was right at the end,
Well, he probably caught a lot more crosses than I did.
I don't know so much. For me, I mean, to be frank, I mean, I remember one game where I thought, oh dear, okay, you had a bad one here, which was at Oldham. But apart from that, I remember saying to people, look at how many goals would you actually point the finger at him for? And I struggled to think of examples of it. I thought you were unfortunate myself, and like you say, maybe now people would understand a bit more, but that was the end for you at Wrexham, and like you said, you moved on, and you did very well.
I think the biggest problem was I came behind a very, very firm fan favourite, and Andy was also very, very well liked by the local newspaper.
Yeah.
And then. For whatever reason, the reporter at the time had it in for me. Whether it was because Andy had gone, didn't like me, or whatever it was. So I had two real sort of touch points there. I was coming behind Andy, and the newspaper didn't like me. So you can't sometimes you can't win against that.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah. You went to Brighton. You did really well. You also played at Shrewsbury, where I'm not sure if you realise this, but I accidentally cursed you in one match, because at the time I was going around getting interviews of ex-players, and I had a horrible run of going to games, having arranged an interview, and then something would happen with that player, and I'd think, oh, should I actually do this? Scott Williams... You remember Scott Williams, the midfielder? I went to interview him at Connors Quay. He was playing for Bangor. He scored the only goal of the game in the last minute, but unfortunately it wasn't for Bangor, and I chickened out of that one. I thought that's not the moment to talk to him. And I went to see you play at Shrewsbury, and I'd asked if I could have a chat afterwards, and you got sent off after 4 minutes. So that was my fault. And I thought, I'll be brave and I'll go round the back. And I asked, and quite understandably, they said, actually, he's not at the ground anymore. Fair enough. I didn't expect... Oh, no, please don't. Please don't. I wouldn't have expected you to hang around, if I'm perfectly honest. But, yeah, so I do feel a bit bad about that. I'm terribly sorry.
You know what? I think I only got sent off a couple of times in my career.
Yeah.
And both times I look back and think, Christ, I wish I'd have just really hit them and deserved to be sent off.
Yeah. Yeah.
I got sent off for a reason.
Yeah, exactly. I remember it really clearly. It was in front of the away fans, and the guy is 1-on-1, he's going round, you went for the ball, you caught a bit of him, maybe, and the ref said no.
No, it was one of those striker things where they leave their foot out and know that they purposely hit you and then go down. What I should have done is I should have just come out and wiped him out.
Yeah.
And then got sent off.
Yeah. Never trust a striker, that's what I say.
Exactly.
Wrong end of pitch, that, all that running around, rubbish that. I'm not having any of that. I tell you, I like the whole idea of the biscuit barrel approach to football myself. And then after you finish playing, I mean, I just love the diversity of what you've done. You were an agent, which somehow meant you would then go and be, was it director of football at Stoke?
Yeah, technical director. That's right.
I mean, I'm struggling to piece that career leap together, but it impresses me. I just love this idea that within the game you can be so flexible. Never mind even what you're doing now, but.
No, it was. I mean, I did a bit of coaching. I coached went into the agency, like say, and then went up and coached at Livingston, who were in the Scottish Prem at the time. Did a bit of goalkeeper coaching up there. But I really enjoyed the whole. I did enjoy the agency, speaking to the players, making sure they didn't make the same mistakes that I'd made. Knowing that, I'd been told that, at one point on my 17th birthday, I'd been told I'd never play football again because I'm a cruciate. So, to be able to understand what they were going through, if they were injured or if they were dropped or if they'd fallen out with the manager, everything that I'd done, I could see that. But I also enjoyed sort of seeing the potential in a player and trying to get him to the level that he, I thought, he deserved to be at. And then obviously I did that for quite a while and started working for a law firm in Stoke called Besix. And I think that then opened up more doors for me because they had a better, having been an ex-player, people were more, they were happier to pick up the phone to an ex-player than, somebody that's just trying to be an agent and so on and so forth. So I still had a lot of good contacts, managers that played against people I knew in the game. And that really pushed me on. I've got a lot of contacts abroad. I've spent a lot of time in Europe because I've never been a Premier League player. I didn't have that. I was never going to get a Premier League player unless I brought one into the country. So I built up that background. And then through all of that, the boss of Besix, who's a very good friend now, he was, he was invited into the boardroom at Stoke quite a lot, and Peter Coates would constantly be asking him, who's your best agent, why is he your best agent, and so on and so forth. And eventually they got to the point where they wanted to open up their Stoke a little bit, just trying to get away from overpriced, overaged English players. When the Premier League was starting to become a little bit more worldly, the current manager at the time wasn't there, so and it was costing them a lot of money, for possibly not the best, league finishes in the world. So because of that, literally they sort of asked me, would you come in and do this? And, I spent nearly 8 years. I think at one point I was probably one of the longest serving technical directors in the Premier League. So, we had some great successes. So it was, and like you say, it was. I didn't take the usual route to get into that position, but it was definitely an interesting time of life. That's for sure.
And then, of course, onto the USL, and this is, I mean, again, a remarkable sort of transfer across. But I mean, it's a heck of a project, isn't it?
It is. It's and that's what I had a couple of options in England that I was sort of just at those last stages of, and I'd spoken to an MLS team. And when I looked at it on paper, if you're a builder, so to speak, you want something where you can actually really get your teeth into, really help it, really develop it, really push it forward. And in some respects, Mark Hughes was, when we were signing players like, Afellay and Bojan and Shaqiri, he would always talk to them about them, leaving the mark on the game, coming and developing, and they've all got sort of legendary status with it. left their mark on the game. And that's what always stuck in my head, can you leave your mark on the game? So when I came here, and it was a bit of a, you're going from being the sporting director of one club to 40, plus all the academy teams and what's below that. It was a real project. Okay, can we start competing against the MLS? Can we, develop these players? Can we start getting involved in the global transfer market? Et cetera. And that was the thing that really appealed to me about this. So that's why it's like, great, yeah. Let's do that. Let's take that option rather than something else.
And it fascinates me in this, when I think of it in the terms of Wrexham now, because for some inexplicable reason, of course, we suddenly have a lot of interest from stateside, and the Welcome to Wrexham programme devoted essentially in an episode to explaining a lot of the differences between American and British sport. The USL seems a little bit like a hybrid, and correct me on this, but British fans would probably be confused that probably the easiest sort of shorthand to explain to a British fan would be to sort of suggest it's the Championship and League One to MLS, but there's no actual promotion or relegation to MLS. It is a completely different body, but in many ways your setup is more European. You're not a single entity, you are a collection of clubs. There is, I'm right in saying, promotion and relegation between your leagues, and it's a fascinating sort of hybrid, it seems to me.
No, it is. So it's still the franchise system.
No.
But then, like you say, the MLS is a single entity, and for people that don't understand what that is, it basically means that the league own the rights to all the players. So they have a say in where they go. You can literally be playing for Los Angeles one week and then get moved to New York the week after. So there's a whole host of different things. If New York City want to sell a player, then they'll negotiate. Say they're negotiating with Wrexham. Wrexham want the player, they'll negotiate a price with New York City, and then they have to go and negotiate with the league. And we went through that so where we signed an American international. We'd agreed a fee of $2.5 million with his club, and then when we get to the league, they went, we don't want our international players leaving. We want $12 million. So they've got no control of it. And our clubs are, whilst they're franchises, they're also run like Wrexham's run. Wrexham are in control of all the players. They can, have full negotiation rights, etc., etc. So, yeah, we're part way through. Like, there's no promotion to the MLS because again, it's just about a franchise fee. We're in the process of determining whether promotion relegation between our Championship and League One works. And I think if it does, then that's a huge step forward in American sports when they're not used to promotion relegation yet. The average football fan in America hasn't grown up watching the MLS. They've grown up watching the Premier League, the Championship, La Liga. So they actually want that excitement. We call them, meaningful games, and that's what they want. They want the excitement, those meaningful games, and if we can do that, we'll be the first ever sports league in America to do promotion and relegation.
Wow, that's remarkable, isn't it? Like you say about making an imprint, making it on the game. That's fascinating. Sorry.
No, do you know what's even more bizarre? And over the last 18 months, so do you remember Jake Edwards, the striker?
Absolutely, yes, yeah.
So Jake's the president of the USL. So actually, the USL have got two ex-Wrexham players moulding the league and pushing it forward. And there's been many times, when we've been in a, random point of America and we're having a glass of wine. It's like, how the hell did two kids that, from sort of playing for Wrexham end up here doing this? It's a great feeling.
That is superb. So there's the two key couples either side the Atlantic are Mark and Jake and Rob and Ryan. Then clearly, so that's fantastic.
Exactly.
I must say as well, I've seen an MLS game a few years ago, Red Bulls at home, when Henry and Marquez were playing for them. And one of the things that struck me, And again, maybe I'm being a bit harsh on British people here, but I think there is a sort of snobby, Americans don't get football, they don't understand this. But the atmosphere was outstanding, and to me, and listening to sort of, World Football phone in and things like that, and listening to American supporters who are now interested in Wrexham, it just felt to me like these were people who loved the European game and wanted a chance to make something like that their own, because there were proper sort of ultras, there were tifos, there was atmosphere, it was brilliant. And you look at like the Cascadia teams, and I mean it's not a case of Americans don't understand soccer ball. It's quite the opposite. It's people who wanted their own local version of it, and I believe you got a very big, wider footprint in America than the MLS, really, in terms of linking up with lots of different communities in that way.
Yeah, listen, that's no disrespect to the MLS or any major league sport over here, because they're incredibly successful. In terms of franchise value and money they make, I think the NFL or the Basketball League are, one of the biggest money-making leagues in the world. But I think our standpoint was that, for us, football can be in any community. It doesn't have to be in a major market. So if, a small town of, and they say small town over here, it's like 500,000 to 1 million people. If that place wants a football club, then why can't we give them football?
Yeah.
Provided we can help them make it sustainable and we can guide them down the right ways of running a club. Every community, if they want a team, should be able to have a team. So we're very much into that, building clubs that are going to be, there in 100 years' time. And the fan base becomes tribal. So if you're born in that area, you support this team. And that's what Europe's got.
Yeah.
But if you look at it, Europe is a fully grown adult. Our league is probably still the toddler.
Yeah.
Finding his feet and wanting to run. So there's a way to go. But what you have here is the enthusiasm to learn, the desire to be the best that they can be. And those two things will just keep them pushing on and on and on. And that's what will make it successful.
I've got to ask you, while I have the opportunity, has Welcome to Wrexham made any sort of impact over there?
So firstly, everybody in our office is watching it.
Yeah.
And I do a consultancy for the English FA on their technical directors course. And we brought last year's group and this year's current group to New York a couple of weeks ago, and we were walking down the streets of New York, going to whichever meeting we were going to next. And I swear to God, mate, every taxi that went past had "Welcome to Wrexham" on the top of it. It's massive.
Yeah.
The other thing that's made such a massive, there's been so that and Ted Lasso. I don't know if you've ever watched Ted Lasso.
Yeah.
So that and Ted Lasso have made such an impact on the sport over here. It's brilliant. Everybody's talking about it.
Yeah. Wow, that's remarkable, isn't it? And it's, I've got to say, from our perspective, I mean, to have owners come in who I think straight away feel authentic, if you know what I mean. There's after years of us having people trying to get hold of the land that our club is on, it's great to have people who come in and talk about community and put their money where their mouth is as well. It does feel like a feel-good story on this side as well. It's fantastic, to be honest with you. I assume it must.
You know what? I think you've got to take your hats off to him because
there
will have been a hell of a lot of scepticism about, what's going on here, why they're doing it, what's the ulterior motive, etc., etc. And I think there's been absolutely nothing other from them. There seems to have been nothing other than, well, we're genuine. We genuinely want to do this. We want to make this club the best club it can be. I mean, and you can't fault them at all for what they've done. So, like I say,
it sort of fascinates me as well that they've come in, and it's not a sort of Steinbrenner style running of a club, if you will, to use an American sort of comparison. They've come in and they've said, we love this, but we're learning. We can't make football decisions. We can make business decisions. And, well, because of their cachet, they've been able to bring in an incredible sort of cast of experts to run the club, or to advise them at least. And I think that feels like a very clever way to go about this sort of project, rather than, a lot of people, when they just throw it in and it becomes a bit of a plaything and it goes sour.
Yeah, no, I think you just got to look at, I don't know much about Rob, but if you look at Ryan's business ventures and what he does, certainly, then he's obviously a very astute businessman. And again, like you say, you've got Les Reed in there, who's a technical director of England. He's helping make decisions on the football. He's like, well, gosh, you're not going to get much better than that. But that's the pull of what they've got. Would Les Reed have gone to Wrexham without Ryan and Rob? Probably not. But that's what's given them the advantage. And I think, provided, listen, there's a lot of people in the game that will just want to pull the pants down and try and take as much money from them as possible. Provided you keep getting the right people whose hearts are in the right place, then it does a big thing.
Yeah.
And I tell you what I also, so there was a Wrexham Legends team being formed just as I was leaving. I think I played one game and then the pandemic hit and everything else. And I think the previous ownership had literally shunned the group, whereas now I think this ownership and the people running it have been incredibly receptive, to the ex-players, and I think that has gone down really well with a lot of people.
Yeah, I think they're very humble and respectful of the fact that the club's been around a lot longer than they have, and they talk about being custodians of the club rather than owners, and as well as I do, that's the sort of language football people want to hear.
Absolutely.
And they want to learn, and in a way that's nice in the sense of, when we're appealing to American supporters, that they're on the same journey as Rob and Ryan in many senses. They speak well of the club's past, though it's very impressive. Although in the initial, their first... Sorry.
I think they did a lot of... They seem to have done a lot of homework and learning about the club before they... they've not been... let's take the new Chelsea owner. Some of the things he said, probably aren't the brightest. And they're a bit egotistical, whereas... I think Rob and Ryan have done their homework and they've been very, humble. We don't know everything about the game, but what we can do is create a good business. And, for the Wrexham fan, you want the club to still be there in 100 years. Yeah. And still, functioning successfully and everything that they've done, yes, whilst it's developed with new things, it's on a sound footing. You don't want to go through some of the rubbish that the club's been through in the last 20 odd years.
Precisely. In their first session meeting the fans, they were asked who's the best Wrexham player of all time, which seems a slightly harsh question to ask them. But Rob was looking to say Arvon Griffiths and mistakenly said Mark Griffiths. He got him mixed up with me. There's a part of me thinks he was right. But I reckon he has done his homework. He knows what's important. Tell you. Well,
Gary Bennett won't be happy with that.
I'm sure. He wouldn't be shy of telling him either, would he? Oh, Mark, I can't thank you enough for joining us. It's been brilliant to catch up with you. And
my pleasure, Mark. Anytime, mate.
Obviously, we wish you all the best in your endeavours. It was fantastic.
No, I appreciate that, Mark, and keep in touch. And I watch, obviously watching all the results and the programme and everything else. So it's nice to see, And you never know. The next.
So there you go, Mark Cartwright. I really got a lot of time for him, and I got a lot of time for him when he played for us. I think he got a little bit of a rough ride as well. So it's good to see him doing well, prospering now. Let's move on to the women's team. Massive, massive game. It seems to me like us and Swansea have just got three death matches coming up in the next 5 or so weeks that will determine both our seasons. We got this Sunday, massive game, semi-final of the Adran Trophy. Then we've got them in the quarterfinals of the Welsh Cup. And then the final game of phase one of the season is us at Swansea. And, well, that's could be a decider for the fourth place. At the moment, Swansea are in fourth, Barry fifth, we're sixth. But, you know, we're within striking distance, especially if we're able to get results against the sides around us. So it's a big month for the women's team, and having started poorly, it'd be the season, at least in terms of results, it'd be great, Neil, to get to bloody Swansea's noses and get some results against them.
Yeah, and as we said, you know, there's been a couple of games postponed because of the weather, so I'm assuming they're going to have to be rescheduled now for midweek games.
One of them has.
Yeah.
They've just rescheduled everything. They've just announced it actually about a couple of hours before we started recording. And basically, because I was wondering what the Welsh FA were actually going to do, because an entire round of games was wiped out. And so I was wondering if they just set the whole season back a week or so, but they haven't. Instead, we're going to be playing TNS in midweek, which is, again, a massive game. TNS top of the table. And the other game's been pushed back a week to accommodate these cup ties, which I've got to be honest, from a selfish personal point of view, I'm absolutely delighted with, because it means I won't have a weekend where I need to go to Crawley on the Saturday, come back from Crawley, and then go down to Swansea on the Sunday. So we've got a home game that Sunday now. So purely from a selfish point of view, I'll live with that. And the fact that the trade-off is we're going to have to play TNS the day after we go to Port Vale, I can live with that. Although it does look like I might not actually be able to go to the final Swansea match because the Mansfield game is on TV on the Sunday. So I'm afraid I'm going to have to go to one or the other. So that's the one disappointment I've got, but that's showbiz. But this is a big game, this. We've never beaten Swansea. But the last few games, you know, that last season in the first phase, they equalised like the 95th minute. So it was 3-3. Then when we played them in the league in the second phase at the racecourse, they scored the winning goal in injury time, 3-2. When we played them at the start of this season, it was 3-2 again. And we very nearly scored in injury time ourselves to get the draw. So they've been very well contested, level games, and they always seem to just have the decisive thing happen at the end. And we need to break that pattern. We're so close to beating them. We just need to do it. I tell you.
Yeah, but wait, I'm going to say that there's a couple of teams beating Swansea as well recently to bloody their noses as well. So
yeah,
there's no reason why Wrexham can't do the same thing.
Absolutely, Britain Ferry beaten by 2 goals in December, and you know they are fourth, which you wouldn't have expected. Sort of good judges were thinking that they were favourites coming into this season, but they're fourth at the moment. Britain Ferry are above them, as are TNS and Cardiff, and we are actually pursuing them to try and get that fourth place. I don't think the top three are going to slip, but so Swansea's our target now. So yeah, it is quite something. They've brought in a couple of players today and lost a couple. So it's going to be very interesting. A hell of a game. I would strongly advise anyone able to get down there, because with no game on the Saturday as well, it's going to be a cracking match, I think.
I'm assuming, Mark, as well, we've got to win all our games to be in with a chance of finishing in the top 4.
In all likelihood, we've got 4 games left. Now, 2 of them are against the bottom 2, and they have struggled all season. Although, to be fair, I've said all along, haven't I, that Aberystwyth, who are second bottom, look better than Cardiff Met. And I stand by that, because since we last played, Aberystwyth, well, they got their second point of the season. They drew at home to Barry. And then in this midweek just gone, they played Cardiff Met. So Aberystwyth and Cardiff Met had drawn in Cardiff. and then Aberystwyth beat them in Aberystwyth, which I think means Cardiff Met are very likely to finish bottom because they've only got 1 point now. They're now 4 points behind. Aberystwyth are a bit improved, but we got them at home, Cardiff Met away. We've got to win those two. We can't afford any slip-ups with that. And then we are 5 points behind Swansea, but their next, well, they have still got to play another game against TNS and another game against Cardiff. So there's scope for them to drop points. Plus, we are playing. Again?
You say we've got to play TNS and then Swansea's our last game.
Yes, so we've got to put ourselves in
last game of the season or last game of this phase could be massive.
Yeah, absolute 100%, and that's the crux of it. We've got to go into that final day of this phase with something riding on the match. So we need to be ruthless against Aberystwyth and Cardiff Met. TNS is going to be tough, but we're at home to them, and we have played well at home. You know, we're a bit like the men's team. We've looked good at home. You know, we were the only team who's beaten Britain Ferry this season, and we battered them as 2-0 very quickly. And we won 3-0, and it could have been a lot more. So, yeah, we've got the wherewithal. We just need to make it click now. It's within our control. We can do this.
You say it's a cup game this Sunday, is it?
Yes, that's right. So cup game on Sunday. So that'll be the League Cup, if you will. And that's the semi-final. So the other semi-final is TNS at home to Britain Ferry. Cardiff are out. So I guess we should look at that as an opportunity, really, shouldn't we? Then we play Cardiff Met and Aberystwyth. Then TNS. Then we have Swansea twice. Quarterfinals of the Welsh Cup. And then in the league. So we need to get those wins against Cardiff Met, against Aberystwyth, set ourselves up. And then hopefully Swansea will do us a favour and drop some points. I'm just getting their fixtures up. So their order has changed. They're playing Aberystwyth before they play Cardiff and Britain Ferry. But yeah, we need to see them slip up. That's what they do.
So Mark, one of these cup competitions, does that lead to any kind of entry into any European competitions at all for the women's team?
Only the league winners. Yeah, go through to that regard. So yeah. By the way, I said Swansea are playing TNS. It's Britain Ferry, but Britain Ferry have already beaten them once, so it's still a tough game for them, isn't it? So yeah, let's see what happens. I mean, we've got the bottom two; they've only got one of those, so I would say our running is slightly nicer. Slightly, we need to take advantage of it.
Definitely so.
Absolutely.
You know, and have a big game against TNS and get something out of that game, and it'll go down to the Swansea game.
Absolutely. So let's.
Have they made any new signings, Mark, the Wrexham team at all? Do you know?
Not as of yet, no. But like the men's team, the month is young. Who knows what might happen? Well, should we? We'll take a break, and then we'll get on to that hot potato, the Welsh League Cup. Who knew a couple of weeks ago we'd be talking about that, eh? Right, so from the women's Welsh football to the men's Welsh football. Although I should have mentioned, of course, that the Wales national team are going to be playing at the racecourse, the women's team, which is terrific as well, a qualifying game as well, not just a friendly, and so that's fantastic.
Yeah, I believe they're playing Sweden, aren't they, at Wrexham?
Yes, that's right. Yeah. The traditional strong women's team, but that'll be great. Yeah, absolutely. Chance to see
it'll be great for North Wales and for the women's football in North Wales.
Absolutely. But then also we've got the men's team suddenly could become relevant in Welsh football. This scheme, which this week the Welsh FA actually put out some of the details of it for us, Cardiff, Swansea, Newport to go into the Welsh League Cup, with the potential of European qualification afterwards. Do you like the idea, Neil?
Mark, I'm not sure. I'm really not sure. I mean, we're used to it back in the the 90s was the last time we were in the Cup Winners' Cup, I believe. So yeah, we have seen some of that kind of football. But for me, you can't have your cake and eat it, and enter the English competitions as well, and the cups there. So I believe UEFA are happy with the the decision.
Yeah.
The Welsh FA are actually going for it, but it's, I believe now there's an EFL or a Football League meeting next week, because I believe that they're not quite happy with what may happen. So we'll just have to watch its space. And I believe there's a couple of Welsh Premier League clubs have objected to it as well.
The Welsh FA are saying that the Cymru, the JD Cymru Premiers, they're unanimous, is what they're saying. I know there's some objections from lower league teams, and I get their objections actually, and I think maybe the Welsh FA should address them, because essentially their idea for this is it's a closed shop. It's the top division and the 4 EFL teams. And so I think quite understandably some of the second tier teams are, why are we not allowed to play in the League Cup? And from a personal perspective, I totally agree with them. I mean, why can't there be at the very least a qualifying stage? I'm quite sure. Sorry, go on.
Sorry, are they talking about increasing the number of clubs in the Premier League anyway next season?
They are, yes, and they've said
16.
and they've said that will be reflected. There'll be more teams in this competition, which means there'll be a qualifying round. I'm just not I don't quite get why they don't just do that anyway with the second tier and get us through to, let us come in at the stage that we're going to come in now anyway, which would be a last 16. I mean, I'm quite sure that the EFL teams have said, if we take this model, the maximum games we'll play on top of our normal games is 4. And I'm quite sure that was a prerequisite. I'm sure that we don't want to play more than 4 games in the Welsh League Cup. But, if the top division teams have agreed that we should have that advantage, then what's stopping them from having a couple of preliminary rounds if they want to, just to let the second tier teams in? So I do have that reservation. I think the second tier teams have got every right to say, well, we are actually part of the Welsh system. Why can't we compete in this?
Do you not think that the EFL may turn around and say, well, if you're entering that cup, you're not going to enter the League Cup or the FA Cup?
My understanding of this is that it's not the EFL who make that call, but obviously indirectly they'll have influence on the FA's decision. And it's the FA who will decide. I mean, I don't think there's any question that if that was a condition that was applied by the FA, I don't think we'd go for it then. I think we'd stay as it is. But it'd be interesting to see just what comes from the FA's meeting. We will forego qualification through the English system, won't we? But
well, that's always been the case, hasn't it?
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah.
So Swansea won the League Cup a few years ago, and they couldn't enter the European competitions from that. So that would be my only concern, that we lose out on maybe the League Cup or the FA Cup.
I can't imagine that we'd accept it on those terms. I wouldn't have thought so, because as we know, we see teams. Well, okay, with no replays now in the FA Cup, maybe it's not quite such an incentive, but nonetheless, as we've seen this week, small teams playing big teams have had good payouts. Tamworth should have got a replay, shouldn't they? But
definitely so. Yeah, I think. I mean, we're going off the beaten track, but yeah, definitely. The replays in the FA Cup. Wrexham, as a Wrexham fan, we've seen some excellent replays in the FA Cup. Blythe Spartans stand out for me by a country mile.
Yeah. Oh, winning at West Ham.
West Ham away, going down to West Ham and beating them 1-0 with a Rooster goal.
Yeah.
We've had some great FA Cup replay games.
Absolutely.
Which is a shame for the smaller club, because it's financially massive for them, and it's again we're bound into the Premier League, unfortunately. So having too many games.
Exactly so. Well, I'm proudly wearing my Stuff Your Super League T-shirt today, just as a sign of, because I knew you were going to make that point. There you go.
Well, the Super League.
Yeah. Well, big clubs in general, eh? Until we become one, in which case, come on, Super League. No.
That's the ambition of the club, isn't it? And ambition of Rob and Ryan is to see Wrexham in Europe as well. And I read today that because of the massive fan base we've got in America, that is a big concern of the EFL with this decision about us allowing us to play in the Welsh Cup, because the money that we make out through our fan base in the States, and it'll give us more funding again and give us a bit more, bit more funding than other league clubs in our division.
Well, the statements from the Welsh FA was talking about us not applying that sort of funding to Football League PSR rules, which I guess means that we shouldn't be gaining an advantage from being in Europe. And I think part of this as well, this is what irks me a bit. It's sort of jealousy of the fact that we are the team who have successfully gone out and got international support. I mean, we've said a number of times, haven't we, how much money we make out of iFollow, and how astonishingly it's more than the big championship teams.
I think that
jealousy, they're just going to have to suck it up, aren't they? I'm afraid. At least
you hit the nail on the head, Mark. I think that's some of the issues as well, that the jealousy from other clubs with the fan bases we've achieved to get now. And, we hear every game now, where were you when you shit, when you go to the away games or when we're at home, we've got a sellout crowd.
Well, I'm going to have to get the bleeping box out now, aren't I?
No, that's not bad words, is it?
Well,
you mean know when we started watching
round in what the pigs produce, but us soft city folk, we're a bit more sensitive. We are.
You mean no, both, Mark. When we started watching Wrexham, there were crowds of 20,000 plus there already. So there has always been that huge fan base in Wrexham, and we did decline away to virtually oblivion, and they did disappear. I've watched Wrexham when there was less than 1,000 there on a Tuesday night.
Absolutely, yeah. I don't know. I just there's a lot of jealousy, isn't there? And I understand that. But my lad was saying that he's not looked on social media the day after the Shrewsbury game because it feels like all of football is celebrating the fact that Shrewsbury beat us. And I can vouch for him because they were doing the BBC Shropshire phone-in after the match. And they kept saying, we've had messages from Wycombe fans, we've had messages from Birmingham fans, they all love us. And I'm thinking, it's quite a strange sensation for Wrexham fan, because usually I think people are pretty well disposed to us, that we're a target to be shot at. Oh, well.
Oh, very true. Yeah, very true.
But, it all comes hand in hand with success. We've got to accept it, I think, haven't we, Neil?
Yeah, that's very true. Totally agree with you, Mark. But I think, as you said, most teams see us as a giant killing now.
Yeah.
Apart from the Birmingham and Huddersfield, they all raise their game when they play us.
Yeah.
I don't think we've ever seen bigger away followings at the racecourse than we have this season. From some of the teams. So they all want to come watch the Wrexham. That's the scenario.
It is, isn't it? Yeah. Where were they when we were whatever pigs did?
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, we might as well wrap it up there on that pig controversy. But this is obviously going to go out a day later. Next week's will as well, after the Birmingham game. Let's hope we got a happier game to talk about. Neil, it's been an absolute pleasure as always to chat with you.
And you, Mark, it's always a pleasure.
Nice one. That's not what he normally says. Right.
That's when the mic goes off.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. We're Scarping. We're Mark Griffiths and Neil Williams from Wrexham AFC.